Welcome to show number 217 of the Arc Junkies Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Becker. Today's guest is Hunter T. Wilson, aka Texas Pipeliner 35 on Instagram. In this episode, we discuss his journey from learning to weld on the farm, to breaking out in the pipeline in oil and gas, to getting into welding education and running a side business. We'll get right into it, right after a quick word from the supporters of the show and some event announcements. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Since 1972, Rockmount Research and Alloys has been the leader in maintenance welding products. Using Rockmount products in combination with their technical expertise, Rockmount customers make stronger, longer-lasting repairs, saving you significant time, money, and aggravation by reducing costs associated with downtime, labor, and replacement parts. Check out rockmountwelding.com today to find out how they can help you with your most common repair. Rockmount has a large variety of rods, wires, and other consumables for all of your maintenance welding, production welding, and many more. And don't forget, you can get all of your Rockmount rods and wires right through mscdirect.com and get free shipping right to your door. Get the job done right the first time, every time with Rockmount. We're also brought to you by ISOTUNES. Upgrade your hearing protection today at ISOTUNES.com. ISOTUNES makes Bluetooth headphones that are OSHA and NIOSH compliant to be used as hearing protection in the workplace. I've been using my Pro 2.0 set for a little over 3 years now, and they're still in great shape and hold a charge long enough to get me through my workday. I've been using them the whole time I've been working on the new studio and while I'm processing test plates at work. They're my favorite piece of PPE. Make your hearing protection fun with ISOTUNES. And right now, you can save $10 off your first pair when you use Arc Junkies 10 at checkout. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders, my go-to machine for all my at-home work and side jobs. My Cyclone 200E has become my favorite machine for doing all my short-circuit MIG welding. The best part is, it's so small and lightweight, I keep it right under my fab table, so it's available to use in a flash. The 200E is capable of 200 amps at maximum output when you run on a 230-volt outlet with 25% duty cycle at 180 amps. You can run 023 to 045 with the optional rollers, and it comes ready for 023 to 030 right out of the box. The Cyclone 200E is dual voltage, so you're able to run off 110 or 230 volt. It also features an easy changeover so that you can run your solid wire or flux core wire. And it holds up to 2 to 12 pound spools. You can pick up your Cyclone 200E right now for just $559 by going to everlastwelders.com. And don't forget, if you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, you can use code word ARCJunkies in the comment section at checkout and get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. Do you like welding? Do you like tattoos? Are you close to Tampa, Florida? If you answered yes to the last 3 questions, then come on out to Ink the Bay this weekend, March 25th, 26th, and 27th, and join me and some of my friends for a weekend full of tattoos and welding demonstrations. Come on out and hang out with Travis Field, Legion 1775, Wally's Welding World, Outlaw Leather, Arc Junkies Podcast, Pipeliner's Cloud, Scotsman Tools, Rugged Charms, Bingo Welding, Peter Zilla, and many more. Tickets are just $25 per day or $50 for all 3 days. Head on over to inkthebay.com for more info. The Kentucky Welding Institute High School Senior Welding Contest will be held April 23rd, and over $100,000 in scholarships and other prizes will be handed out. There's going to be special appearances by Stephanie Hoffman, Jacob Schofield, Ray Ripple, John Weslow, the Arc Junkies Podcast, and many more, along with sponsors and vendors to include respected brands like Up and Smoke Welding Apparel, Outlaw Leather, Alumareel, Heavy Hitter TIG Rigs, and many more. First place in the competition is going to walk away with a fully restored 1967 Lincoln Electric Classic Red Face and a pile of other prizes, while second and third place win their respective choice of a Lincoln or Miller inverter welding machine. The contest is going to be a 2G and 3G with backing with a 7018 8-inch diameter electrode. Coupons are going to be cut and bent to determine the winner. There's also going to be an oxy-fuel cutting contest with many prizes. Last year's event had over 100 welding competitors from 17 different states, and this year's already shaping up to top that. The competition is going to kick off Friday evening with a casual event full of food, games, live music, and a chance to tour the facility, meet welding influencers, chat with KWI staff, and simply relax before Saturday's contest. So if you think you've got what it takes to put your welds up against the best in the nation, go ahead and sign up. Be at the Kentucky Welding Institute on April 23rd. You can register online at www.kwi.us and find out details on any of their social media platforms, or by calling 606-849-WELD. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
This is Bob Moffett. You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast.
listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Hunter, welcome to the Arc Junkies Podcast.
Hey, man, it's great to be here.
How's things treating you out there in Texas?
Oh, it's awesome. One day it's hot, one day it's freezing.
See, I wish we could get some colder weather down here in Florida, man. It's always seems to be hot. There's really no in between. It'll be cool first thing in the morning, but then by 10 o'clock, we're back up into the mid 70s, 80s.
Yeah, it gets like that most days here.
Yeah. So when how did you get into welding originally?
So my dad and two of his brothers were originally welders by trade. One of my uncles is still doing it, but he's more of superintendent level now. And my dad, he kind of hopped around, did some structural stuff, some stainless piping here and there. And then after me and my twin were born, he went back to school and became an ag teacher, just because he wanted to be home more often. And he started me and my brothers welding when me and my twin were 8. My older brother had already been welding for quite some time before that. But my dad figured it was easier to get things welded at the ranch, and he could sit back and drink beer with his brothers if me and my brothers knew how to do everything.
Right.
So he started us pretty young on that, and it just kind of stuck. It's where I wound up. Originally, my senior year in high school, what the plan was to weld for a little bit, go back to college and get a master's degree in ag education and be a high school ag teacher. And I started working in the oil field, started seeing those checks, and never went back to college. I got done with welding school, but after that, I never went back to college.
Now, how'd you break out and do, I'm assuming, being there in Texas, you broke out doing oil and gas work. How'd you break into that?
My older brother was working for this mom and pop welding company in just outside of Alice, Texas, and that's where I went to welding school. Also, was it was in Alice, but my brother and we were sharing a car at the time, and I had a date with some girl, so I dropped him off at work that morning. He had to go to a rig, and I was supposed to go back over there and pick him up. Well, his boss comes outside when I'm waiting for my brother, and he was like, "Hey, your brother told me that you know how to weld." And I was like, "Yes, sir, I do." And he was like, "All right, cool, you start tomorrow." And that was that. And my thing is, I never started off as a helper. I've always been working as a welder. When it came to, the jobs I worked as a welder, I guess. I mean, I was very closely supervised. I started off doing small stuff like cellar caps, fixing open top tanks, fixing trailers, just dumb stuff like that until that old man got to trust me. And then after that, he started taking me to drilling rigs and showing me how to set well heads and do, the miter cuts for the flow lines, and just pretty much whatever until I worked up enough trust that he just started letting me go on my own.
Damn, so you kind of lucked out into it.
Yes, I lucked out into it. And while I was in welding school in Alice, Texas, it was called the hub city of Texas for the oil and gas industry. So there was a ton of welding shops in Alice at the time. And after a while, I just started hopping hops to try and learn as much as I could from different people. because like I said, the idea was to be a high school ag teacher, and I didn't want to teach welding and not know anything about welding other than how to stick some plates together. But I just hopped around from job to job until I got out of college, and then caught word from a friend that they were looking for a single-hand welder in Karnes City running pipeline. I hopped on that bandwagon, took off, pretty much been on the road ever since.
That's what I heard when I was talking to Jacob Schofield. He said, like, that's the best way to kind of break out is see if you can get put on as a single hand, because you don't need the rig. I mean, like, everything's kind of provided for you. You just show up with the stinger and the talent to be able to do it.
Yep, that's pretty much how it was. And I mean, even when I didn't have pipeline work, I've always tried to find some kind of welding. If not, I've done different things. Like, I've ran equipment before. I worked at a prison for a while, but most of the time I've been welding, and you know, that's just how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to ask, because like oil and gas, you know, for years it's always up and down. It's either wide open or, you know, it's like pretty much like the construction industry. You know, it's feast or famine. You know, so you're either balls to the walls or you're at a dead standstill. So like, what do typical pipe welders do when it's at a dead standstill and there's not kind of like right now, you know, there's not a whole lot of oil and gas going on. Everything's kind of dried up for the most part. What's the most rig welders doing right now?
A lot of them are like building fences, building carports, or trying to learn something new. At least that's what they're doing a lot of down here. I have a friend that he's been laid off, or he was laid off for a while, and found some job up around one of the Great Lakes, working at a shipyard. So, you know, most of us are just trying to take whatever we can get at this point. Mm-hmm. But this is also why I never wanted to stick to just one aspect of welding, whether it's, you know, pipeline or drilling rigs. I wanted to be able to do it all. So when this did happen, I still have a way to make money.
Yeah. That's kind of the biggest thing with like when people get into welding, they're like, what process should I learn? All of them, you know, because you're versatile at that point. If you only know how to do, you know, downhill stick welding, you know, if once that work dries up, you know, maybe, you know, nobody's hiring for that, but like, you know, somebody's got some stuff for structural, you know, flux core gas shielded or self shielded, or you got some TIG work over in this shop. I mean, you just switch gears, you know, you just go from one environment to the next. You might be changing alloys or processes, but you're multi-versatile. So you can kind of adapt to different surroundings, whatever the job market's open for.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had students come in that they tell me like, oh, sir, all I want to do is learn downhill pipe because I just want a pipeline. And it's like, well, if you do that, you're going to go hungry more often than you think. And it's like, well, my cousin's a pipeliner and he makes a ton of money. It's like, yeah, he absolutely does. He makes a ton of money when there's work.
Yeah.
But when there ain't no work, he's just sitting at the house not doing anything. So if you don't believe me, ask him. And then they come back and they're like, well, maybe I guess I'll just go ahead and learn how to do TIG too. And I was like, well, you need to learn that uphill pipe too, because even in some facility jobs, you got to run uphill. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a lot of pushing kids to not be one-trick ponies, because that's not what the industry needs. The last thing the industry needs is more one-trick ponies, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, welders are needed everywhere. So, I mean, the more skills you've got in your back pocket or the more knowledge you've got, you know, as a welder, the better off you're going to be, because you can, like I said, you can go from one industry to the next, not just change, you know, I'm out here on the pipeline. I mean, you can get into manufacturing at some point. You can get into structural, or there's a lot of guys that, you know, they get into architectural and ornamental. I know that Jacob Schofield's doing a lot of that. He kind of went from doing a lot of pipeline work to, you know, residential construction and industrial construction, ornamental, architectural, you know, that type of work. So being multifaceted and knowing how to do something other than just run downhand, you know, having a lot more tools in your toolbox, being a more versatile welder, you know, like I tell people all the time, like the more knowledge you can get out of, you know, take advantage of everything. If you're going to pay for a welding school, don't just go in there and learn one process. Learn everything. Learn how to operate the equipment in the shop. I mean, there's been times that I've worked for companies and there's no welding work to be done. And some of the guys were like, well, screw it. You know, I'm a welder. I'm going to go home. Hell no. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need material cut, I can be your guy. You need that floor swept, I can sweep that floor, because you know what? At the end of the day, you're paying me the same amount of money to weld as you are to go over there, and cut and measure beams or punch holes in base plates or sweep the floor. It all pays the same at the end of the day. Don't be too proud to make that money.
Yeah, and I've gone and sat at gates, because they're building a location. They don't have any welding work, but they're like, hey, we'll pay you to go sit out there and just make sure cows don't get through. I took that. That's easy money. Sit there and watch Netflix all day?
Yeah.
You ain't got to tell me twice.
And then you guys, like you were saying, you guys do a lot of like railing and stuff down there, or like cattle fencing and stuff. That's pretty huge in Texas, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, there's always work going on with that, because everything out there's, it just rusts to shit. You got to be constantly out there replacing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I seen a lot of people out there like doing that type of work, and I've always kind of wondered, like, what's the bidding process on that? Like, how do you remain competitive when you're in Texas and there's welders everywhere in Texas? How do you remain competitive when you're out of work trying to pick up side work without cutting your throat on the bidding process?
Well, see, from what I've seen, anyways, down here in this area where I'm from, a lot of people already know someone who welds. So they already have their favorite welder that they're going to call first. So there's not exactly a lot of competition for it. I quoted a friend last month, I think, on a gate entrance and some other stuff. And the only other competition I had was his brother. And I came out cheaper somehow on that one.
Yeah, his brother didn't give him the friends and family discount, apparently.
Apparently not. But, I mean, even my friends and family don't get family discount. My mother pays full price.
There you go. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So now how do you transition from like going from oil and gas and doing all that into education and teaching welding?
Really what I'm doing is I'm taking what I've learned in the field and trying to apply that to what the students need. And as it is, I'm still learning a bunch of new stuff every day, whether it's, how to be an educator or in welding itself. So I'm constantly evolving with that and trying to make sure that gets back to the students in the long run. And some days are easier than others. So, I mean, I've asked you for advice before and other welding educators, and I think that's just the best thing right now is trying to get more advice to make my program better. Yeah,
I mean, and having a network. Like, I remember when I first got into teaching, and like I didn't have anybody. I didn't know any other welding instructors that I could call. I had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of stumbled into it, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And they're like, here's a set of textbooks. There's some old machines from the 1980s, and that's pretty much what you got. Damn, like there's nothing set up. There's no, curriculum from the previous instructor. So like I'm doing research and digging, and it's like, how do you teach this stuff? And like when I got into it, like I didn't even think of getting on Instagram because hell, I don't even think I had an account at the time. So I didn't know anybody. So I mean, it was a hell of a struggle trying to figure out, how do I teach these kids? How do I connect with them? How do I pass this information off? What do they need? What don't they need? Because I don't want to give them a bunch of stuff that they're not going to be able to use when they get out. And a lot of it, I just started building it from experience.
Mm-hmm. And see, at the time, really the only good welding instructor I knew when I started teaching was my dad. And I mean, I love my dad and all. He's a great welder. Most people down here will tell you he's the best aluminum welder in South Texas, but he's pretty old school with a lot of stuff. And so I noticed a lot of his methods weren't getting to my younger audience as well as it did when he was teaching me and, kids from my age group. So, reaching out to or finding other welding instructors and reaching out to them for advice has been a huge help.
Mm-hmm. So what age group are you typically, or what age group are you teaching right now?
Right now I'm doing a lot of dual credit students, but I do get some college age students, some traditional and non-traditional students. Like right now, I have one that's almost in his 50s, I want to say.
He's probably the hardest working student you got.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have students from as young as 16 all the way up to like 50-ish, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that ends up being a lot of different personalities being in one room and trying to figure out the best way to teach each individual person. That's the hardest part I found, because what one method you use on one student doesn't work on the rest of them, so you kind of have to curtail your teaching methods and your strategies from one personality to the next.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, of course, you also get some of those dual credit students that are there because, like, well, I'm here. Why didn't I get 100s when you didn't do the work? Yeah. And those kids will always be the struggle. But at the end of the day, I love them anyways.
Yeah. It's just figuring out different ways to motivate them, like showing them, hey, that you're here, make the most out of it. You're in this class, like do something with it because this is a skill set that can, put you on a career path that'll last you for the rest of your life.
Yes. And it was back in, I want to say the fall of 2019. First day of class comes around. I have this new student in my class and he was one of my dual credits. And, first day of class, I have everyone go around, introduce themselves, all that good stuff. And he stood up and he tells me, he's like, sir, I want you to know right now, I don't have anything against you, but don't expect me to try very hard in this class because I want to be a diesel mechanic. I don't want to go out to the oil field and, do all that pipeline stuff or whatever. And I was like, so you want to be a diesel mechanic? He's like, yeah, I want to build custom race trucks. I was like, oh, buddy, you are in the right place then. And that semester, he was taking a hardwire MIG class and a blueprint reading class with me. And he was like, what do you mean? I don't see how I'm going to need any of this for what I want to do. And so I showed him. I got on Weld Porn and another Instagram account. I don't remember which one. I just started showing him all the different custom welding stuff they do on those, those custom exhausts and those custom trucks and cars. And he was mind blown. And that semester, he was the hardest working student I had. And even though he's graduated and moved on, he still comes in every single chance he gets and just practice. And, he's even shown me, like, snapped me pictures of blueprints that he's looking at for custom parts he's building for, this particular race truck or that particular race truck. So once you see that light bulb go off in their heads, that's when it's all worth it.
Yeah, and you found a way to reach that kid, like, because before, like you said, he had like no interest in doing anything. He wasn't going to put any effort, and then he turned out to be one of the hardest working kids in the room.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's my buddy Ryan Eubank has a knack for that, man. Like, he takes kids. I mean, he's got a lot of high school students, but I mean, the way that he's able to get in there and interact with them and get them to focus and put forth effort, it's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And he does the educator workshops. We're actually planning one, I think, in June down here in Florida. So you might want to come out and check that out. But he's just like, his methods. And like, he's become one of my biggest mentors because as soon as I went up and went to a workshop with him, I was like, man, like there's not the kids in the class that, they don't want to participate. They don't want to do it. They're just the kids that you haven't reached yet. And as soon as you do, man, it's like you said, the light bulb comes on and they're like, wow, you got to figure out a way to make it relevant and make it interesting to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been dying to get out to one of those workshops. I need to, because anything I can do to, help those students and help the program grow is really what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. What all processes are you currently teaching in the program?
Right now we're teaching, the basics, MIG, TIG, stick, flux core, and welding automation, which is mostly how to run a CNC plasma table.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the CNC part, that's like, I don't know why that's such a hard program to teach. It seems like I only have a couple students that are actually, everybody's interested when it's running, but as soon as you're like, hey, I'm going to do a class, and like, you start trying to show them, they get so frustrated trying to draw something up that it's like you lose them. They're like, yeah, this isn't as easy as it looked when you were, playing on it the other day. And it's like, yeah, but what you didn't see is all the Fridays that I came in, when nobody else was around and, taught myself how to use this system for hours on end. Like, you don't see that. They want that instant gratification. And it's hard to teach that. And if somebody doesn't have like a background in drafting or, technical drawing or something like that, it's hard to convey that information.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not just with the welding automation. That's with welding in general across the board. People see these guys with these slick rigs on Instagram or TikTok, laying down these, really slick welds. And these students come in, they're like, I want to do that too. And they try it for an hour. And next thing you know, you see a stinger flying across the shop and some kid yelling and cursing. And it's like, you got to go over there and tell them, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. You got to take the time. And I've had a couple students get upset with me and say that I make it look too easy. And it's like, guys, I've been doing this, since Jesus was in high school. Mm-hmm. You got to put in the work. You got to take the time, no matter what it is. You got to take the time to get good at it. And I tell all my students too, like on your off day when you're not doing anything, come by the shop and practice. As long as I'm here, come by and practice. Because how often do you see professional athletes practicing? All the time. Mm-hmm. So why aren't you practicing all the time?
That's a good way to explain it to them.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, there's no other way to explain it. And it's just getting them in there to do it. Because a lot of them say, like, you know what? Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow, first thing.
Yeah. And you're the only one in the shop.
And exactly. And I mean, there's some Fridays I go in, I open up the shop and say, hey, y'all want to come by. Nobody shows up all day. But then you see on their social media, they're at the beach or, cruising around town, something dumb, wasting money instead of learning how to make money.
Mm-hmm. We do the same thing. We open the shop on Fridays. We're like, hey, shop's open. All the instructors are here, because we're there anyway. We got to be there 5 days a week. Students are only there 4 days a week. It's like, you want to come in, work on some, extra, put in extra time or work on makeup time or, fall back to a process that, we worked on and you weren't quite there yet. And we moved on to something else. Like, you want to fall back and work on that. Like, a lot of people, struggle with stick. Like, if you want to come back in here and burn some 7018s or 6010s, come on in. We'll show you. We'll work with you one-on-one on the booth. And, I'll ask, on Thursday, like, how many of y'all are showing up tomorrow just so I can get a rough head count? You'll get, like, 6 or 7 hands. And then Friday morning, 7 o'clock rolls around, like, nobody's there. 8 o'clock, nothing. And then by like 9 o'clock, one kid will roll in, then he'll hang out, and then like just disappear at lunch.
Yep, I get that quite a bit myself. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a handful of kids that they'll show up, they'll spend the day putting in the work. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's not as many as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, I mean, but then there's times where my class on a Friday is just as full as it is any other day of the week. It's sporadic. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they plan it on me or what, but it's like, one Friday I'll have nobody show up, and then a couple Fridays later, like, I'll have 10 or 12 people in there. Mm-hmm. It kind of flip-flops, but it's like, I want to see you guys in here every Friday because you're only here for a certain amount of time. And then once you graduate, you're going to be out there in industry. You're not going to have time to pop in on a Friday. You're going to want to swing in on a Saturday, and guess what? We're closed on Saturday.
Yeah. And see, I tell all my students after they graduate or, they learn what they want to learn and take off, I tell them, hey, you got a day off, you're laid off, whatever, on a day that I'm here at the shop, come by and practice. And I had one former student come in and he was there every single day. He started coming in October and came the rest of the semester every single day. And he had already, been out for a while, rigged out a truck. Well, half rigged out a truck. He's not quite there yet, but he'd come in every single day and practice. He'd bring his own rods, bring his own pipe, and he's just sawing away all day long.
That's the type of thing you wish you could bottle that up and feed it to everybody else.
Yes, absolutely. And, that kid is going to make it because he's got the want to. He's hungry for it. And that's the kind of stuff I like to see.
And that's the thing you can't teach is that work ethic and that want.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's instilled in some and it's, not in others. And it's hard to, I wish I could figure out a way to teach that and kind of, you don't, like, I didn't even realize it when I was in welding school, because when I went through welding school, it's like, I want to be a welder. But I spent more time like hanging out and BSing with everybody than I actually did in the booth. And it wasn't until years later, it's like, damn, luckily I've been through 3 different welding schools, but I was like, I really pissed that initial opportunity away hanging out and being a high school kid, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what this trade or what this career was going to do for me. And had I known, this trade's been here for me for the past 24 years, but the kids I was hanging out with, after that term or, after I graduated, I never seen them again. So it's kind of figuring out, where your priorities are. And it'd be cool to kind of figure out a way to explain that to people to where it sank in.
Mm-hmm. And see, I have some students that have that want, they have that drive, that work ethic. But then I have some that are like way on the far end of the other spectrum. I had one a couple of weeks ago tell me, sir, I don't really need to learn how to weld. I just need to learn the lingo and how to walk the walk, because I'm just going to go out on location after I get hired in and just hide on location all day and make welder pay. And it stopped me. And I was like, what did you just say? He's like, I saw this dude on TikTok that does that. And, so if he can do it, I can do it too. And I was like, that dude's joking, right? And he's like, no, he's dead serious. He posted it on TikTok. It's like, no, that guy's not actually doing that. Nobody is going to pay you to just disappear on location. And you don't just fill out a job application and then walk onto a job site making $80 an hour. Not in most cases anyways. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, you got to take a welding test. You have to show up for the test and pass it before they let you even fill out the application. And he was just completely mind blown by that. And that kind of stuff surprises me, because from what I hear, it's not an uncommon thing to hear from students. And that makes me worry.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet. I haven't even seen any videos about that.
I've seen a few videos, and it's mostly like some dude hiding in a gang box saying, when I get to work, I hide because good workers are hard to find.
I've seen those, but not like somebody trying to like fake it on a job site as a welder just by knowing the lingo or something like that. I mean, I don't see that passing off anywhere.
Nope.
Because I tell students all the time, because they get enamored with being able to pass a weld cert. And I was like, that's great, man. That's awesome that you can do that. But guess what? Mm-hmm. Once you leave here, wherever you go to work, if they're a good company, they're going to weld test you again. So these certs are going to help build confidence. They're going to help get your foot in the door, but it's not an end all be all, right? It's not an all access pass once you've got this certification. You have to be able to demonstrate that proficiency. Like, I know one company, they won't even put you through the interview process till you pass a weld test. And you can't even take the weld test until you pass a tape measure test and a structural shapes test. So if you can't make it past those 2 written tests, you don't make it to the weld test. If you can't pass the weld test, you don't get to the interview. So, I mean, they've got like a couple of different layers built into their hiring process, because they want to make sure they've got somebody that's well-rounded and they're not just talking the talk and walking the walk.
Exactly. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't understand is, you go take that, let's say you're going to go pipelining, you go take that butt and branch test on 12-inch, and it's real easy, to get through that test. But then you get out on a job and you're doing 2-inch schedule 40 in a ditch that was pretty much dug by hand, and you have 8 inches of room to make that weld. So these kids need to learn, like, just because you can pass the cert doesn't necessarily mean you can do the job. And this is why when you're in that booth, you need to practice getting uncomfortable as much as possible. And I have some kids that want to try and drag their machine out of their booth or their table out of their booth because, oh, it's too cramped in there. Well, sorry to say, buddy, get used to it.
You got plenty of space.
It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look over there and it's like I can weld left-handed upside down in there, no problem. But then again, I'm also teaching at the school that I went to welding school at, so I know all the tricks of getting in that booth.
That's one of the things I like doing with the students, because you'll see that, you know, some of them start getting cocky because they produce a couple of good welds. Be like, okay, yeah, you're good. Now, you know, let's do this. And I think I learned it from Jesse Serpan, because he had his students doing some crazy stuff inside of a booth, and I was like, that's freaking brilliant. Like, I make them get uncomfortable. You know, because the way our tables are set up, I'll take like a 3-inch, like a 3/8 plate, you know, that's probably about 3 foot long, and drop that from the arm. So now they have to get up underneath the table and try and produce those same welds. So like you were saying, like they're on their back trying to weld overhead with their left, you know, or non-dominant hand, with, you know, that plate being about 6 inches off the floor. Go ahead and give me the same results in that position, because once you leave here, it's not going to be in a perfect little booth. You're not going to be able to set that coupon, you know, exactly where it needs to be. It's not going to be exactly 4 or 6 inches, you know, so we'll cut out like random size of materials and fit things up. And then I won't let them do base metal prep on it, because some jobs you get on, like, no, don't grind it, don't clean it up, just weld it just like it is. And you're going to have to do that in some places. So I try to prepare them, especially. I love it when they start getting cocky, and then you put them in that situation. They're like, oh, damn, I'm not as good as I thought I was. It helps build that confidence, because then they start getting good being uncomfortable or welding with their non-dominant hand.
Yep. And everybody needs to learn to be ambidextrous if you're going to be welding.
Yeah, just having that ability to switch from one hand to the next, because a lot of times you're not in that perfect position. You know, you've got to stretch. You can't get in there with your right hand. You've got to reach in there with your left hand. Like I did columns up against tilt walls in the corner, and like you can't get the right side of your body in there. And I'm not left-handed, so I got to reach in there with my left hand and just kind of look over my shoulder to be able to make that weld. And you know, the inspector's not going to care. Oh, was that too hard for you? Okay, we'll write too hard on there, you know, in the as-built drawings and stuff. So we'll give you a buy on that one. You can pass that one off. That's not how it's going to work. Like that weld's got to pass inspection.
Not. And I find myself, especially doing a lot of structural stuff, or small structural stuff anyways, I'll weld something up with my right hand and then just immediately switch to my left and weld the other side up, just because it's easier to just swap hands and go than to walk around, reposition, get comfortable, and then weld it with my right hand. It just makes things easier and just a little bit faster in some cases.
Yeah, especially like even
which
like
is
in a shop
really good for your customers.
Yeah, even in a shop environment when you're working around a table, sometimes it's easier just to switch hands and get in that corner than it is to walk around the other side and kind of reposition and get comfortable. You go from one corner to the next, you know, just switching hands back and forth. And at one point, you know, it's going to become fluid. You're going to do a lot of grinding trying to figure this stuff out, like in a lot of rework, but like once you've got that knack for it, you understand like how to work that travel angle and that work angle and all your different feeds and speeds and all that good stuff. Once you figure out how to do it with both hands, you once again become a little bit more valuable.
And see, what I tell my students when it comes time to learn to be ambidextrous is whatever you're doing with your dominant hand, just do the exact same thing with your non-dominant hand. Don't freak out. Just whatever you do with this hand, do it with that hand, and it'll work. People's biggest problems when it comes to learning welding, or anything new for that matter, is they overthink things. They overthink it, they start stressing, they start panicking, and then it all goes to shit, and that's when you start seeing tools fly across the shop.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools, makers of heavy-duty fabrication tables, toggle clamps, and a plethora of other fabrication items to make your life as a welder and fabricator that much easier. Stronghand is coming out with new innovations on a weekly basis of tools to help you decrease time and increase productivity. And if you're a student and you want to register your school for a free gift pack, head on over to stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies and register today. Now let's get back into the show. That's the hardest thing. Like I noticed a lot of my students, they get that death grip on their stinger or their torch, whatever they're working with, and it's like, no. You got to finesse this stuff. You can't force it. You can't manhandle it. Just finesse it. Back off, relax. You don't, that stinger's not going to fall out of your hand. Nobody's going to come over here and snatch it out of your hand. Just relax. You just need to hold it just firm enough for it not to fall out of your hands. And then you just kind of guide it in.
Yep. And this semester I'm teaching a TIG course, and I have a lot of kids whenever we're practicing walking the cup that cup is just sliding right off that plate because they're trying to force that cup down on that plate. And it's like, no, guys, like, calm down, take it easy. What I like telling them is I want you to hold this stinger and put as much pressure on that stinger as you would if I gave you a pine cone to wipe your ass with. Any more than that, and you're doing too much. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, they get the idea, but they start overthinking. Then they start stressing. Then they start forgetting what we just talked about. And then it's back to square one.
Do you find yourself repeating the same information over and over again?
All the time.
So it's not just kids in
Constantly.
Florida. I'll get a new instructor in and I'll be like, hey man, they're over there, go check on that student. He's doing it. He's not doing it right. Like, man, I've told him like 6 times. I was like, you're probably going to tell him 20 before, at least the end of the week. You're going to have to keep reinforcing this stuff because like they're learning a new skill set. So you can't get frustrated. And I think that's what's taught me a lot of patience, because I used to be a real hothead when I was younger. And it's taught me a lot of patience, just sitting back and understanding that, hey, this is new. This is a completely new skill set to them. They don't understand, things the way that I do as it pertains to welding. They don't have the fundamentals. They don't have this knowledge. They don't have the understanding. So you're going to have to keep reinforcing it. And repetition is the best way to learn something. So you got to keep reinforcing it. They might not catch on that first time, but as they continue to do it wrong and you're there providing that guidance and, reminding them and kind of giving them that confidence that they can do it and just kind of nurturing them back into, whatever they're doing wrong, just keep reinforcing and repeating what you're doing. And you can't get frustrated. Eventually it's going to catch on, it's going to click, and, that light bulb's going to go off. They hit that eureka moment, and then it's like, boom, they got it.
Yep. I understand that one. And it's teaching me a lot of patience as well. But I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing at this point.
It has that effect.
Because it really does. And I mean, I signed up for this because, in my opinion, we need more welding instructors that know what they're doing. People like you and me that, we've gone out into the field, we've got experience, and we know the different tricks to different things. And I mean, I can show you, 50 different ways to do anything TIG or stick. And someone who just went to college and got a fancy piece of paper, they can probably show you 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a problem. I think there should be something illegal about being a welding instructor with only a degree.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't have that problem here. With the biggest problem that I see is, well, I mean, there's 2 problems. Like, somebody gets put in that position, like they take the ag teacher and they're like, hey, we're going to put a welding program together. And nothing against the ag teacher, because they know enough to get by out on the farm, but they don't really know about structural and pipe welding and, the proper methods to do things. They just, hey, we got to get this stuff stuck together so we can get the tractor back up and running or get the hoe up and running. Nothing against them. But, you've got people that have been thrown into that position and they're trying to help out and they're doing their damnedest. But then you've got other instructors that they couldn't make it in the field. And they're like, man, this would be an easy gig if I can get in there. And, and then they spend most of their time in the office or hiding out, or, like they're not interacting with the students. They're not out there on the floor, showing them things and teaching them things because they don't know it themselves, or they're teaching it completely incorrectly. And then these kids get out in the industry and they're like, oh yeah, I just went to welding school. Like, I know what I'm doing. My instructor was awesome. And they get out there and they can't weld for shit, because their instructor, I think caring is the biggest thing. Like, if you're going to be a welding instructor, step one, you have to care about what you're doing, because there's no money to be made in it. You got to care.
No, absolutely not.
You got to be proficient yourself. It's not one of those things, like there's that old adage, those who can't do, teach. And it's like, no, I've done this shit. I've been doing it for the past, several years. Now it's my turn to share it to the next generation. And that's kind of where I get my passion from, is taking these young men and women, teaching them a trade I'm passionate about, and then springboarding them into industry so that one day, they can go out and get experience and then come back and they can teach the next generation.
So my dad was a teacher for several years and taught at a few different schools. And what got the idea to start teaching in my head was I was coming back from a job, and it was pretty early in the day still. And I decided to stop by my dad's school because I was driving past there and just, BS with my dad. I was in no hurry to get home, so I had time to kill. And I walked in there, and this welding instructor that worked with him was just talking all this stuff about how, I used to work on the pipeline, and, if you want to learn pipeline welding, I can teach you. And one kid was like, well, I got some 80-10 at the house. Can I bring it? There's no such thing as 80-10. And I'm sitting back watching this guy, and I was like, what the hell? And he's like, on the pipeline, we run 70-18 all day, every day. And don't let someone lie to you and think that you need some big old honky machine to go out there and weld it. Because I always welded 42-inch pipeline with my Miller Bobcat 250. I couldn't help myself after that, and I ended up calling him out. And I was like, what outfits did you work for when you were pipelining? He was like, well, you name them. I welded for all the big ones. I was like, no, you name them. And, I worked for DCP. And I was like, who else? Well, I don't see how that's any of your business. What do you know anyways? And I was like, I know that we run 80-10 on pipeline jobs. And he was like, you're full of yourself. There's no such thing as 80-10. I was like, okay, bud. And one kid brought it up. Well, they weld downhill on pipeline, don't they? He cut in real quick. He's like, no, it's illegal to make downhill welds. And I was like, you may have worked for a pipeline company, but I don't think you ever welded X-ray quality pipe.
He was in the tool crib.
Yeah, had to have been. But come to find out, he's never worked in the field. And he's just full of it. He went to school, got out of school, and almost immediately after getting out of school, just started teaching.
Damn. That's sad. And he had the alleged credentials to go in there and do that. And that's another big thing, is like, the administration doesn't know any better. They look at a resume and they're like, oh, welding. Okay, you're a perfect fit. Like, no, they're not. And like, you really need to sit down and have a conversation with this person. Like, I mean, most of the instructors that I brought on board, we sat down and had like a 6-hour conversation. We're walking around the shop, we're talking, and it's like, I'm just picking their brain as we're going and doing more listening than talking. Because, after you've been out in the field for a while, you can call bullshit. And so, like, most of the instructors that come through, it's not just a 15-minute interview process and like, oh, well, it looks like your certs check out. You got some certs from, here, there, and everywhere. And you did really good in the interview. Congratulations, you start on Monday. Nah, we're going to sit down. We're going to have some conversations. I had one of my instructors actually do a weld demo. I was like, oh, you're pretty good with TIG welding? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Actually, we just started TIG welding on Monday. Why don't you do a demonstration? Like, teach them like they don't know anything about TIG welding. And he went in there and freaking rocked it. And I was like, cool, you you're going to work out, because they knew what they were talking about. You know, when he was talking about, you know, here's the tungsten prep, and, you know, here's the collet size, and, you know, here's the collet body, and, you know, this is the size cup you want to use for this application because of, you know, this, that, and the other thing. Here's where we're going to set our argon. This is where we're going to set our machine up. So I was like, okay, this guy, he actually knows what he's talking about. He's legit. And he had all the certs and stuff to back it up. But like administration people, you know, especially at the school level, they don't know shit from Shinola when it comes to bringing in a skilled tradesperson, because they've never worked that application themselves, the majority of them. You know, they've all went to school, they got their fancy degrees and stuff like that, and they think they know better than everybody else. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, these people in the office, like you said, they don't know nothing about it. They just hear welding. They think of a cartoon character with a cutting torch and a welding hood. And I think that's something that needs to change. In my opinion, just like how everyone should take a home ec class or something of the sort, everyone should take a welding course. Even if it's just a basic intro to welding course, even if you never strike an arc again a day in your life, everybody needs to know something about welding, because at one point in your life or another, you're going to need something welded, and you're going to have to call someone like me. And you need to be able to identify, okay, that weld is worth, you know, the $200-300 I'm paying for it. And this dude over here is trying to rip me off and obviously doesn't know what he's doing. And I try to make that point to all these kids is pay attention, because even if this doesn't work out for you, because it's not for everyone, and that's okay, you just need to know what a good weld is. At least at the bare minimum, you need to know what a good weld is.
Yeah, especially when you're jumping on a carnival ride.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about that the other day, because we were at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and one of the little one's friends was like, let's go to the carnival and get on the rides. It's like, nope. We don't get on carnival rides around here. We don't do that. And I mean, I stopped getting on them when I was about a junior or senior in high school, because that's when I started paying attention to these things. And I mean, the boss lady here gets upset with me everywhere we go, because I end up inspecting welds everywhere on everything.
Yes. That's I tell you know, like once the kids get in class and everything, I'm like, you guys will start looking at welds everywhere you go. Stand in the line at Chipotle, you're gonna look at welds. You go to the theme park, you're gonna look at the welds. You go down to the go-kart track, you're gonna be analyzing welds. The handrail at the airport, everywhere you go, you're gonna start judging people's welds. It's just like a natural thing. Like if you give a shit about welding, if you care about what you're doing, you're going to be analyzing welds everywhere you go. And my wife gives me so much flack about it. I was at a theme park, what was it, last Friday for spring break. We went to Volcano Bay. And like as we're standing in line for stuff, you know, like I've got my hand on the handrail and I'm just kind of feeling, and then I'll look underneath and she'd be like, you're looking at welds again, aren't you? I was like, yeah. She's like, why can't you just enjoy the day with your family? I was like, I am, but I'm also like checking my work against other people's work, or, you know, like I'm looking at all the structural elements.
That happens all the time with us too. But I will say this, I was actually impressed by some welds I saw at the concert that Monday night when we went. We walked past one of those, I don't know what you call them, but it's one of those aluminum deals that holds up the lights and stuff. And the welds on there were actually really, really nice. I was honestly a little jealous because I'm not that good with it.
I'll look at, you know, on the side of trailers and stuff when I pull up at a red light, I'll look over and I'll be checking out like the aluminum bodies, but like checking out the weld spacing and all that, and be like, oh yeah, you got some stress risers in there, bud.
Yeah, shit. A few weeks ago, I was riding with a friend, and we pulled up to a stoplight next to an 18-wheeler, and I was looking at the rack that holds his spare tire underneath his trailer. I was like, dude, when that light turns green, go, because this dude's fixing to lose his tire. That rack is destroyed. I tried to get a picture of it, but he took off too fast. But I do the same thing all the time.
Get in front of that guy.
Don't be behind him.
And it's insane what people actually, you know, like put on equipment or something like that. I watched a guy on, I think it was Yeah, it was a video on Instagram. He's fixing like a log trailer. It's got the big yokes on the back and everything. And there's like a big 2-inch gap in it. And he's just like shoving bolts in there and tacking it and then welds all over top of everything and then like grinds it out smooth and throws some paint over it. And I'm like, that's driving down a highway somewhere. That's on a major interstate, hauling freaking logs. And like, if you're my age, you've probably seen Final Destination. Like I don't screw around with a log truck, man. Anytime I see a logger truck, I get in front of them. Like I ain't playing that shit.
Yeah, see, we don't have a whole lot of logging trucks down here. We mostly got pipe haulers, but because of Final Destination, I don't stay behind pipe haulers either. But speaking of welding bolts, I mean, a friend of mine works at one of the bigger hunting ranches in my hometown, and he sent me a picture. They were fixing some deer blinds and some feeders, and they had some big old cracks in them, and they were just shoving bolts in there and welding both sides of the bolt. And he was snapping me pictures. He's like, "See, I can do your job." It's like,
no, you can't, sir.
No, you cannot. And he was like, "Well, how much you charge us to come out here and do this for us? Because this is bullshit. We don't want to do this no more."
And then you gave him a price, and they're like, "Yeah, maybe we will do it."
Well, shit, my buddy was like, "Hell, I don't care. It's not my money. Come do it." But his boss ended up saying no.
Yeah, you don't want to pay to get it done right, but wait till somebody falls out of that tree stand. You'll be the first one they call and be like, "Hey, we're in the middle of some litigation. You think you can come out here and fix the rest of these?"
Yep, unfortunately that's what I'm waiting on.
Mm-hmm. That's usually, man. That's the time that'll happen. Is like somebody's got to get hurt first, and that's why I'm so big on safety. Like at the school, is training these students because like I've seen it like out on the job sites, like. All the rules and all the laws and everything that we have to abide by out on the job site, all these rules were written in blood. Like nobody had to wear safety glasses on a job site until somebody got an eye injury. Nobody had to wear a hard hat until somebody got hit in the head with a hot rivet, building skyscrapers and shit. Nobody had to wear a harness until somebody fell. Like these rules are there because somebody freaking died. So wear the gear so you're not the next statistic.
Yeah. And I have a picture that I got sent from one of my other welding instructor friends' student sent it to me, and I use it at the beginning of every semester, and every so often I'll just pop it back up on the TV for them and remind them. And it's a picture of this kid who he was using a Tiger disc, and it was one of those ones where it's got the big aluminum backing. And he ran it down all the way to that aluminum backing, got that grinder in a bind, no handle, no guard, no face shield, just safety glasses. And his face is all tore up. You can see the inside of his nose from the outside. It's a pretty gruesome picture.
Damn. That's one thing I did is like, because I remember my shop teacher back when I was in high school. And like I went in there, like I didn't know nothing about woodworking. And the first day he just sat down and showed us, gruesome images of here's an accident on a table saw. Here's a guy that got caught up in a drill press. Here's a guy that lost his arm in a lathe. This guy got cut up in a vertical bandsaw. This guy hit his hand with a router. And it's like, holy shit. This is before we got to touch any tools, got to talk about what we're going to be building, like all this stuff. So that like when I started teaching grinder safety, because I decided to do like a whole segment on grinder safety in the shop. Because I've seen a lot of grinder accidents. But that's one thing I did. Like I took to Facebook and Instagram and just said, "Hey man, send me pictures of like accidents that you guys have had with a grinder. And if you're cool with it, I'd like to use it in a classroom presentation." And I got a lot of nasty images and stuff. So like I started putting it into my grinder safety things. And like with all the they'd send a picture and be like, "Here, and here's the story behind it." And it was just like, I tell my students, put the guard on the grinder. If you can't reach it, a lot of people take the guard off and the handle because they're like, "Oh, I can't reach into where I need to get with the guard or the handle. It's in the way." Well, you don't need to use a grinder then. There's other tools for that. You can get smaller grinders, you can get other tools that'll get in there. You can do the work safely. And just trying to convey this information before they get out in the industry and develop these bad habits, because everybody else has been doing it because that's the way they've been doing it for 20 years. until the day they have an accident. And the next thing you know, they're putting a guard on their grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta, safety is one of the biggest things that I hit on, because like, if you can't do your job, you can't do your job. Like if you get cut up, you get put on the bench, you end up in the hospital, you're out of work for a couple days, your wife, your kids, your husband, like they're depending on you to bring in that income. And now you can't do it because you're laid up because you were too proud to put a grinder on or too proud to put a face shield on because that doesn't look cool or it's an inconvenience. Well, now how big of an inconvenience is, 3 weeks sitting there waiting for your stitches and stuff to heal before you can get back out on the job site. And oh yeah, by the way, as soon as you get back with that workman's comp claim, they're going to bring you back onto the job for one day, and they're going to do a one-man layoff because you were a safety violator.
Exactly. And I mean, for the first 2 weeks of every semester, I start off with that grinder safety video that you put up on YouTube, and we talk about it, go over it again and again and again and again. And I just drill that into him for the first 2 weeks. I don't care if it's this student's last semester with me. He's heard this speech 1,000 times. So you're going to hear it 1,001 times because people forget it. I actually had this talk with that student that came back in his own rig to practice. He was cutting something with a cutoff wheel, and he was using a 7-inch wheel on a 4-inch grinder, and that wheel snapped and a piece of it went right past his face, and all he had on was safety glasses and his welding hood up. And so I go over there, I'm having a talk with him about it, and he's like, well, you keep in mind, sir, like I've been, in the field for a couple of years now, and, these guys, they make fun of you if you stop to put a face shield on or, you put a guard on. It's like, so what? Deal with it. I mean, if you get hurt, they're not paying your bills. Mm-hmm. And if you get laid off, they're not paying your bills. If you get hurt bad enough you can't work anymore, these guys aren't going to pay your bills. You got to take care of you, and you got to take care of you first because nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, that's the same thing I repeat to all my kids is, somebody else is going to be the one that's probably going to hurt you. So you got to be vigilant of everybody that's around you. Pay attention to your surroundings, especially when you drop your hood or, you got your face shield, you're involved in work. Make sure, check the people that are around you. Because if you're doing everything right and you're working with the people, a bunch of people that aren't, they're more than likely going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. So you got to make sure that the people around you are working safe as well. Even if somebody's next to me using a grinder, I'll put a face shield on because I'm in that vicinity. If I can't get out of that area, like I've worked in elevator shafts with people and they're in there, with a 6-inch cutoff wheel and everything. Like, nope, I'll put my face shield on. I can't get out of here, but I'll throw a face shield on. I'll kind of sit here in the corner because, somebody else is most likely going to hurt you if you're doing everything right. So you got to pay attention to what you're doing, and you got to pay attention to what everybody else is doing. I mean, there's a lot going on a job site. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, even in, our school shops, there's a lot going on. I remember when I was in college, my welding instructor was walking across the shop, and he had just walked out of his office, and he was going to get something from his wife. I think his wife brought him lunch or something. I don't remember. I just remember he was walking out to go talk to his wife. She was parked right outside the first bay door, and there was a kid buffing something across the shop, 20 feet away from him. And since he was just going out real quick, he didn't put his safety glasses on. Wire off that wire wheel came across the shop and hit him right in the corner of his eye. Didn't hit his eye, but right where his eyelids kind of meet in that corner. Mm-hmm. And that wire got stuck there. And I remember watching him turn his head and just go straight to the bathroom, which was right next to us, and pulled that wire out of his out of that little flap of skin. And after that, we had to sit for a week and talk about safety, even though it was his mess up, because he should have been wearing glasses.
Yep. I have one kid in the shop that I would when he first started the program, I was constantly riding his ass. Put your safety glasses on. Put your safety glasses on, all the time, giving him strong reminders anytime you walk in the shop, or I don't care if you're working or not, there's other people in there running grinders, they're back there welding, sparks are flying everywhere. Put your safety glasses on. He went to work for one day at a welding gig. I've not been able to get him to take those safety glasses off since he came back in the shop, because he realized the potential. He's like, oh, like I need to keep these on. And everybody's like, oh, well, they fog up. Well, if you pull them forward a little bit, let the air circulate in between your eyes, and you don't have to pin them to your face. Pull them down just a little bit to where they still got, protection. You'll be fine. They're not going to fog up as bad. And if they do, you got to deal with it. You got to figure something out.
Yeah.
They make anti-fog and stuff. You can put them on there. You can clean them with Dawn dish soap. Like there's a lot of things you can do to keep them from fogging up.
There's also those safety glasses. I don't remember the brand off the top of my head, but they got this foam insert around the eyes with little vents in it. So you can put it up to your eyes and they don't fog up as bad because they got those vents in there.
Yeah, I know MCR's got a set like that. Who else? I think 3M's got a set kind of like that. They've got the foam gasket around there.
Yeah. I want to say Hellraisers is the brand I'm thinking about. I don't even know if those are still around, to be honest. But there's a few different brands, like you said, out there that make stuff like that. And that's one thing I tell my kids if they're worried about glasses fogging up is, well, go find those. And one thing I like to do with all my students is, well, here's a list of all the different places you can find this stuff. And, buy once, cry once, because especially safety equipment, this is what you're betting your life on in most cases, is this safety equipment. So get the good stuff, buy once, cry once, and deal with it. That, and you don't want to look like some hobby shop welder when you get out on your first job. And that Just a Tip Tuesday you did, I think last week or the week before, where you were talking about safety. When we come back from spring break, I'm going to be getting all my kids to listen to that episode too, because we touched on some really important stuff there that I liked.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. By the way.
Oh, go ahead.
The blue lens that you were talking about with the gold filter, Wins lens is the best.
Wins lens. Okay. Yeah.
Wins lens, ultra cool blue.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that's the company that I bought from the second time, but American Optics made one that, like, apparently it for some, like they had to quit manufacturing them because it was like a certain part of the, like what is the color spectrum. So you got Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, all that other happy horse shit. Like one of those was able, it wouldn't block out a specific light. And like that IR was potentially hazardous to people that would use that lens. And so I think they went out of business. It could be an urban legend. Like you can't really find any information on Google, but like if you can find one of those lenses, I mean, they're like ridiculously priced. You're talking like $1,000 and it's glass. Oof. So if you drop it, it's done. Like you can't get another one. You got to pay another $1,000. I think,
hard pass.
Yeah. I think Matt Arnold has one. I think somebody gave him one or something. There was somebody I was talking to that like somebody gifted it to him. Like, here you go. And he's like, you shitting me? Like, you understand what this thing's worth? Yeah, I don't need it. Take it. But you just
I wish I had friends like that.
Huh?
Yeah. I wish I had friends like that.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's like a high dollar setup.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing I ever got like that was this really, really old Lincoln Stinger. Had a cage around the top of it where you put the rod. It's trippy looking, but I like it.
You guys sent me a picture of it. Clay Chesham sent me one of those Optimus Stingers. Have you seen one of those?
Yeah, I've seen them. Been wanting to try one. I can't find them anywhere.
Awesome. They're amazing. So it's like a cross between a twist lock and just a standard Stinger. So you've got the handle on there, but you got the same. It's like a pin that the handle controls a pin, and it drives that electrode up in there, so it doesn't you don't have any jaws in there to worry about kind of wearing down. And when you lock that rod in there, man, that thing ain't going anywhere. So then you can position your rod, bend it whatever angle you need, and then weld out with it. I mean, you can't yank that rod out of there. It's freaking insane.
Yeah. To me, it seems like a better Stinger V And I mean, the Stinger V is my favorite, but I've been wanting to try one of those.
It's kind of like a Stinger V, but whereas like the Stinger V kind of bends it like almost like a pair of scissors almost, or like a PVC cutters, but like dull, and it locks it in there like that. This one's just a single pin that comes up from the bottom, but it's got like a hell of a spring in there. And like, it took me probably 30 minutes trying to figure out how to take this thing apart to hook it up to my Stinger. You literally have to smack it on the table to get it the handle to separate from the body, so you can actually hook it up to your cable.
Wow. But I need one of those.
Dude, it's freaking awesome. I'll have to ask him where he gets them, but I think he collects Stingers. Yeah.
I collect all kinds of old welding tools.
I want to start collecting welding hoods, like old school welding hoods.
Yeah, I know Matt Arnold posted one the other day that was pretty cool.
With the chin strap in there?
Yes. I've only seen one in real life. I worked with this old man here in Corpus that swore by those things. He was like, if you ever find one of these, I swear you'll throw that pancake away and just use this all the time. And I want one. I'm not going to throw my pancakes away, but
right.
I want one for sure.
I had when I was in the Marine Corps, one of my sergeants was telling me about this welding hood, and I was like, yeah, you're full of shit. You're like, I'd never seen anything like that before. And like, we were in Iraq, or no, I was in Iraq when he was telling me about that. So that would have been right around 2004. And it wasn't until like a week ago that Matt Arnold posted it that I've ever seen one. I thought for the longest time, I thought he was full of shit. And I was like, there's no way you can like just open your mouth and the hood flips up. But I'll be damned if they ain't got one.
Yeah, and my thing is, I'm just not surprised anymore. When someone tells me something exists, I'm at the point where I'll almost believe them. I worked with this other old man that told me that there was a headgear that you could get for a pancake where you could just nod your head and it'll come down, and then you can fold it right back up like a regular hood, but it still kept that box right up next to your face. And he swears up and down it's real. I've never seen one, but if it's out there, anyone listening to this podcast that finds one, let me know, because I want to try that. That seems pretty interesting.
We might want to cut that part out and just start engineering them.
Gosh, I was thinking the same damn thing. You and I can figure it out and get rich off of it.
Figure that out and get rich off of it. I gotta find something to retire.
Yeah, same. If I can retire early, that'd be even better.
Right. So now you still do side work in addition to teaching welding, right? Or like you run a company on the side, just like a lot of welders do. But what are you primarily doing on the side?
Whatever calls. I'll go do rough cuts, final cuts on production strings for some of these well reentries that they're doing around here. I do small new pipeline construction, mostly 6-inch and down. I'll do pipeline repair on any size, equipment repair, just whatever calls. I have a few different customers that they always find something for me to do. So I'm usually always pretty busy.
Mm-hmm. So how do you kind of balance working at the school and then doing the side gig?
Lots of energy drinks. Because there'll be times that I get home from a night class and I get halfway through dinner and it's like, oh, we're going to a rig. Hop in the truck and let's go.
Damn.
So it's just trying to manage my time is the best way I can describe it. It doesn't always work out, but because with the oil field stuff, you never know what's going to happen. Like Sunday, I got called out at 1:00 in the morning to go do, rough cut, final cut on a production string. And, it's quick 4-hour job. It's so easy. I can pretty much do it in my sleep these days. And I ended up being out there 18 hours.
4-hour job turned into 18.
Yep, because someone decided to close the rams on the BOP and crush the pipe. Flattened it out. So it took a lot to get that thing out. And that's just part of it. You, especially in the oil and gas, you have to be ready for anything. And anything can happen in just the blink of an eye, and everything can change. So, I mean, most of my customers know, like, when it comes to school, like, when I got to go to school, it's time for me to go to school. Like, if I got to leave a job in the middle of it, I'll find someone else to go take my spot, but I'm going to class. Because at the end of the day, the students are more important than that job. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, most of my customers are pretty understanding about that. I've lost a few because I had to leave some jobs, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can just use that. That's like your main priority is, going for the school.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, if I lose a customer, well, that's just more time I get to spend with the family at home after work. So either way, it's a win-win for me.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to be optimistic.
Yeah, I didn't need that job anyway.
Mm-hmm. I got 6 others lined up. Don't worry about it.
There you go. I was looking for a job when I found you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, man. It's been great talking to you. I know you're on the road right now and you're headed back home and everything, so I'm going to let you get to it. But I appreciate you taking the time out of your trip and everything to hop on the show and chat with me for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm real excited we got to do this. This is awesome.
Yeah, I've wanted to talk to you for a while because I seen you at the adult welding competition up there in Houston a while back.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize, like, you seemed like super busy because you were in the middle of the competition and everything, and then I think you took off like right after.
No, I stayed pretty busy helping other people. There was this one kid signed up for the pipeline competition not knowing he needed his own rig. So I told him he could use mine. It never ran a branch test, so I was there giving him pointers. The judges were getting mad at me. I was like, whatever. Like, hey, kid, try this instead. Kind of stuff. So I wanted to get a chance to talk to you too, but, we were both just super busy.
Yeah, I think right at the end we did a podcast on site, so I kind of got pulled away to do that. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I'm glad we got to catch up. I should be in Houston sometimes this year. There's always something going on down there that I want to get out to, so.
Yeah. I do know I will be at the next adult welding competition. So if you're there, I'll be there, and maybe we can get together, have a beer or something.
Definitely.
Chit chat some more.
Yeah, I'll definitely be at that. That was an awesome event. And I think next year it's going to be even bigger.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Because I'm telling you, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the whole day was a blast. Like walking, you get to see like the industrial people, and then you kind of go outside, and then they had all the pipeline, stuff set up and everything like that. So I'm interested to see if they add like another sector to it next year. Like another industry.
I can't wait.
I think that'd be kind of cool to incorporate another industry, because the way they had it set up was really cool, because like I think Republic was doing all the testing, or Scott Witkowski was Republic set up the way they were going to do the testing. So you had independent judges doing the visual during the test, and then you had another entire group of judges with another whole different score sheet doing the final visual, and then after that they took it out and did X-ray. So I mean there was like 3 layers of inspection built into that whole system. So I mean there's no way you could cheat. I mean if you shit the bed on a root pass, or not even the root pass because they would inspect that, but if you screwed up on one of your inner passes or something like that, they're going to catch it on X-ray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, that's what made it even more fun. Mm-hmm. And I'm really looking forward to next year.
Well, definitely. I'll see you out there, man.
You got it.
All right, Hunter, before we get out of here, why don't you go ahead and plug your social medias, tell people where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Texas Pipeliner 35 and on TikTok at Professor_Wilson. I do try to answer messages on Instagram as they come. I can't get to everyone, but if you need some advice on something, just want to talk, hit me up on Instagram. And I appreciate all of y'all, because without y'all, this ain't possible.
Right. Well, hell, man, I appreciate you coming out on the show and everything. Hopefully when I get back down to Houston, we'll link up.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget to check out arcjunkies.com to pick up hats, shirts, and hoodies to show your support for the podcast. If you're going to be in Tampa this weekend, go ahead and stop by Ink the Bay and say hi and pick up some Arc Junkie stickers. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for an all-new episode of Just the Tip Tuesday. I hope you all have an awesome week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.